Good evening and welcome to the March 11th, 2025 meeting of the Spakenville Union Free School District Board of Education. I ask that you rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 2.01 is an internal audit risk assessment report for our 2024-2025 school year.
Good evening. So this year, our firm performed the internal audit for the school district, and just so everyone is aware, New York State requires all school districts to have an annual risk assessment done and also a focus area test. And we performed both of these for the district. And the focus area this year was on purchasing. And as a result of our audit and the focus area, we suggested some updates to the district's policies. Also, posting the financial statements on the website, and in the purchasing area, the items that we selected, we did not find any issues, and just some recommendations for updating the purchasing policy to align with the requirements of New York State. And other than that, we just want to thank the management for all of their assistance. Val and her team were very helpful in getting through the process, and overall, the district looks good. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Item 3.01 is comments from the public on consent agenda items only. Do you have any public comments on consent agenda items?
Good evening, thank you. Ralph Cimento, I'm president of the BOCES board, and it's election time, and my term is up. So I was stopped by to just let you know there are 3 vacancies, and there are several people running, including myself, for re-election, and I just appreciate the support. Thank you. I'm obviously a Spakenville resident as well, and I've been president of this board in the past as well. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ralph.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President. Or do I need to fiddle with this? No, you can fine.
Sounds good. I hear you well.
Superintendent Trustees Gully Stanford, and I have the honor of serving on the BOCES Board of Education as Vice President to the eminent Ralph Cimento, from whom you've just heard. By a strange coincidence, we are both up for election on the same year. It's been a great honor. I'm in my 5th year serving on the board. It's been a great honor. I do apologize for the infrequency of the visit, but you could not be better represented than you are by President Cimento. And of course, we've been able to keep up through the Dutchess County School Boards Association. It's always good to see Spakenville so very well represented. And I have the honor to be the great uncle of 2 of your fine recent graduates. So very aware of the wonderful education the young people in the Spakenville School District do get from you. As Ralph said, there are a couple of vacancies. It would be a great honor if you would include me in the nominations, but perhaps more significantly, the 22nd of April, I would be greatly honored to have your vote to be able to return to another term at the Dutchess BOCES, doing our best to serve the needs and the interests of all our county-wide districts. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Consent agenda items only? No? Any board discussion on consent agenda? Anything that needs
needs to be pulled and discussed, or? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as written.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. That brings us to 7.01. A little more discussion on BOCES. We have a BOCES budget presentation.
You know I'm cursed. That's right.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you this evening to talk about our proposed budget at Dutchess BOCES. I'm Jody DeLucia. I'm the district superintendent at Dutchess BOCES, and I'm joined by our assistant business official, the amazing Mike. I almost called you Mike Dexter. Mike Scarrett. Matt does extend his apologies this evening. I know that you thought he might be here. He had a family matter to attend to. But we are very pleased to be here to talk to you about the proposed budget for the 25-26 school year. Predominantly, the conversation is going to be about the voted on portion of the budget, and I'm going to let our business mind talk about that piece with you. We, of course, it's kind of a PDF, so it's going to be a little weird for you to see. We do have our board of trustees, and Mr. Chimento does represent the Spackenkill School District. He is our board president. We have Mr. Billy Sanford representing Hyde Park. We have Ms. Karen Burka from Pauling, Mr. Mike McFarland from, it's okay, I have it here, you just can't see the rest of the faces and it's fine, from Wappingers. We have Michael Reel, who represents Beacon, and we have Ms. Karen Smythe from Red Hook. So we're going to talk a little bit about the budget and about our priorities moving forward into the next school year, and kind of talk a little bit about our vision for innovation, growth, and partnership for the agency as we move forward. And I am incredibly happy to turn the presentation over to Mr. Scarrett, who will share the timeline with you.
Thank you, Jody. And again, thank you to Dr. Fanwelly, Board President, Mr. Kohler, and the rest of the Board of Trustees for allowing us to be here. We know your time is valuable. We know you got a lot on your plate for tonight. We thank all the students for being here. This is our first one, but I guess the word's getting out already, so that's pretty good. This is pretty good. So I always feel like it's kind of important, and again, I won't get into too much detail because again, I know you have a lot on your plate, but I always feel like it's kind of important to explain our process, some of our assumptions as we go through our budget and our rate setting process. And this is really a rate setting process at the BOCES at this point in the process. We really start in November and December setting rates that we can give to our school districts so that you can make decisions on whether or not you want to purchase our services. We're just one small piece of your overall school budget, but you need to know what we ultimately need to charge for our services so that you can consider rolling those into yours. So we really spend those 2 months in preparation of rolling out a services guide and services forms with our rates so you can make those decisions. We try to give you about 3 months to look at that. We ask that you send your service request form. It's an initial service request. We're always going to work with school districts as they need to come into services or get out of services or edit the levels of support that they need. But we do ask that you send that back in April to give us a good sense of what we need to do resource-wise in terms of hiring, what we might need to do with some of the vendor contracts that we need to support you. And we certainly will work with you if you need another couple of weeks on that. I'll jump a little out of order here. By our June board meeting, we asked our board to approve an initial budget, which is the first kind of swath of your service request, you and all the other districts that we support, and approve that budget as our initial budget 5 minutes after the board approves it, it's outdated because districts are constantly coming in and out of BOCES services. The one piece that, and Dr. DeLucia mentioned this in her opening comments, the one piece that you don't decide, I can come into a service, I can get out of service, the one piece that you actually vote on and it's fixed, that gets shared with our 13 component school districts is our administrative budget. And I'll talk a little bit more about the two pieces of an administrative budget here in just a second. But we ask that all districts vote on that on April 22nd this year. And we also have a capital allocation, which I'll talk about here in just a second. So that's kind of our rough timeline, big animal picture timeline. Some of our budget assumptions, much like a school district, we need to make some assumptions when we're setting our rates. We always try to assume consistent enrollment in our CTI, our Career and Technical Institute, and our special and alternative education programs. We obviously hope to grow throughout the year, and we have seen tremendous growth in recent years, but if we establish kind of a flat baseline year over year, as we do grow, most of our infrastructure and fixed costs are covered, and we can return that to you in the form of surplus. And I have a slide later in the presentation about the level of surplus that you've received the last year. We've assumed a 7% health insurance increase. Our Dutchess Educational Health Insurance Consortium actually just within the last week passed rates that are just a tick lower than that. But we have additional retirees each year that we need to roll into our budget. And I'll talk more about why this number is so important. We get non-component school districts that participate in our services, so districts outside of Dutchess County. To the extent that we can deliver quality service to them, we can bring in some administrative fees to help offset the costs that our component districts pay. And then we're always focused on upgrading and increasing our focus on our facilities, our maintenance plans, and our safety and our security posture. So those are key assumptions that we're going to roll into our budget. So as I mentioned, the one budget that we will ask you to vote on April 22nd is our administrative budget. Two big pieces here. The one is and I'll keep talking here, we'll get this back up in a second, but the one piece is our administrative budget as you would kind of expect it to be, right? Our active employee administrative budget. We call it our non-retiree admin expenses. This is our superintendent's office, our board of education, our HR department, our business office. Actually, that's going to be a reduction this year of just under 2%. We had a couple of new hires that took a health buyout. So we actually were able to save some money there. So our budget will actually be down just about 2% year over year on our, I'll call it, controllable admin expense. The other piece of our budget, which is about 3/4 of our budget and why health insurance is so important, is the cost of all of our retirees. I'm sure you've heard Matt mention this in years past, but no matter where the person worked when they were at BOCES, which program, which service, upon retirement, all that cost shifts to our administrative budget. So you see it's a shade over $5 million here. And that's why, again, it's so important that we really keep our finger on the pulse of our health insurance costs. You put the two pieces together and the total budget is up about 4.5%. We now look at how we're going to allocate that out in terms of our revenue streams. We don't have a tax base, as you know. We don't have state aid, as you know. Our two components of revenue are the charges that we bill to our component school districts and our other sources of revenue. Our other sources of revenue are pretty small, much like yours. We have some interest income in here. We get some money to be the lead agent on the DHIT consortium. We have some insurance recoveries and things like that. So you'll see that we're actually projecting a decrease year over year. We're kind of expecting interest rates to come down. We also, if you look to the left, and if you've seen the presentation prior to now, there's a big number there under other revenue. That was the return of some retiree health insurance money that we were mandated to return to our districts. Our auditors mandated we return that. So we had that cash in our coffers. We were able to garner some interest on that. So that's another reason why we think it's prudent to lower that other revenue number. So you put those two numbers together. Again, it's the 4.54% of revenue, with the district's component share being 7.95%. This next slide just shows the breakdown between our school districts. On the lower part of the slide here, we see Spack and Kale highlighted in blue, and this is much snappier when these things are flying in here in a PowerPoint presentation, but we figured we'd give you the PDF so we could kind of take the technology piece of it out. But your increase year over year is going to be 6.5%. So when we have to allocate our administrative budget out after we've calculated it, we do it based on a thing called RWADA, or Residential Weighted Average Daily Attendance. it's in essence your enrollment. There's some weighting factors for high school age children, but for all intents and purposes, it's your enrollment. And your enrollment over the total defines your overall percentage of the pie. Your enrollment is going down a little bit year over year, whereas the county's number is going up. So your share of that's down a little bit. So you're actually 6.5%, whereas the average is 7.95. So one of the few instances in which you want to see your enrollment going down. That's the administrative budget. And you guys can slow me down if you have any questions. We'll leave some time at the end, certainly, but feel free to slow me down too. The other piece that I talked about that will be considered on April 22nd is our capital and rental budget. We appreciate your support with our large capital project a few years ago. This is just our annual contribution to do things like just maintain our roofs. We want to replace any doors, windows, things of that nature. We ask for $1 million contribution each of the last handful of years that gets allocated out to the districts. We have actually 6 local school classrooms, and 5 of them are in Spackenkill. So we certainly appreciate your partnership there. We like those in-district classes. So again, your share, this is a reduction year over year. Your piece of this pie is actually going to be down about 1.7%. The last thing I wanted to show financially, we talk about surplus. Obviously, you've heard of BOCES aid before. We think it's kind of nice to see your overall spend with BOCES and compare that against what you got back in terms of surplus and state aid. You see on the left-hand side here, just a shade under $5.7 million of spending with our BOCES last year, for which you received back surplus of $455,000 and BOCES aid of $1.5 million. Put the two together, it's just under $2 million for 35% of your money returned in the form of those. So if you think about it another way, you're spending 65 cents on the dollar when you send someone to BOCES. So we never want to sell our services based on aid. We want to be competitive with private entities, but the reality is, there is a nice benefit to using the BOCES. And actually, my little caveat there is special ed services, of which there's a good chunk in that $5.7 million are aided directly to you through a different mechanism. So actually, your funds back on your BOCES service is even north of 35%. With that, I will turn it back over to Dr. DeLucia for our goals and focus areas.
I get to talk about the fun stuff that is not money, but I can't do it without the money. So thank you. So first, again, I really want to thank, I have many, many partners, longtime partners in this room with me tonight. I see Dr. Mulford nodding her head. And it's really nice to see all of you and to be here with you tonight and to watch some of the successes that I've seen grow throughout the county, that you've all been the wonderful beneficiaries of here in Spackenkill. We certainly have seen, and I'm sure that you've heard this here at the board table in Spackenkill, we've seen a very large increase in students at the BOCES since my arrival back in 2021 as the deputy. We had approximately 450 students in our Career and Technical Institute, and right now, including our adult nursing program, we're pushing about 1,000 students this year, which is a fairly substantial increase in our hallways. Our Resilience Academy has gone from around 85 students at the beginning of last year to 174 this year. What's also interesting is the growing needs. Our Salt Point Center as well has seen these types of growing numbers coming back to numbers pre-COVID, right? So I draw that to your attention to also draw to your attention some of our goals as we're moving forward. One having to do with space, and one having to do with strategic planning. So as an agency, we really are looking at the best ways to be innovative, to be supportive, to meet the needs of your students in the best ways possible, and to create the most therapeutic programming that we are able to provide. The needs of the students that are being sent to our loving care have grown fairly dramatically over the years, and we need to make sure that we have the programs in place that are going to best support the students, not the students that we had, but the students that we have, and the students that currently don't have placements here in Dutchess County, and we want to keep them all at home and take good care of them. So a big focus area for us is to be creating additional programming with a lens to increase therapeutic services for our students, and we're taking a lot of steps to do that in the coming school year. And some of this will take multiple years to implement because you have to staff it and you have to grow it, but it's a big goal. You can see that one of our goals, of course, is our safe, welcoming, and respectful culture, but then you see two focus areas for us on space utilization and state-of-the-art facilities. And so those are going to be priorities. I mention these to you because we are going to ask for stakeholders for input in both our strategic planning process from the county and on a stakeholder facilities committee as we think about what the next step for space is. By my estimation, we'll be going into the 25-26 school year short 5 classrooms. So I know that's an interesting thing for someone who just said we just finished a capital project, but you also heard the enrollment numbers that I just shared. So I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. As we grow, we're going to make sure that we have that continued focus on partnership with our component districts, with our county partners, and with our industry partners. So that will also continue. Can't see in my own notes. I'm at the age now where I can't decide if I want the glasses on or off. Are any of you there? So that's kind of the gist. You're going to see new programming. You're going to see smaller ratio sizes in some of in our services guide for some of our students and our programs. And we are going to invite you as stakeholders to participate. And I really hope that you do take advantage of that. Our students truly are your students, and I think it's really important for your voice to be heard on all of those committees. I do appreciate the never-ending support that I get from your fabulous superintendent and your administrative team. And I think I have one more slide. I do, yep. So I was going to just keep talking forever. Oh, it's not actually up there?
No.
Oh, I'm just kidding. Hold on. You don't have the slide I have. But I did want to just share with you some of your direct student numbers in our programs. So, did you do this part already? Okay. So, in our special and alternative programs, you have 6 students at our Salt Point Center, which is our K-8 building. You have 1 student currently enrolled in our alternative high school, and you have 7 students in our in-district programs. Of course, 2 here in Nassau, Hagen, 4 here at Nassau, and 1 in our Red Hook High School program. But you do really participate very well in our CTI programs, and the students graduating from our CTI programs, of course, graduate with so many wonderful opportunities available to them, including access to lots of credits through articulation agreements in our local and not so local universities. You have 44 students attending the Career and Technical Institute. You have 4 in cosmetology, 4 nursing assistants, 4 in trade electric, 3 in welding and fabrication, 3 in auto tech, and then 26 kind of randomly spread all over the building. And we're thankful for their participation. We do have, in the past 3 years, we just figured it out today, we've opened 9 new classrooms. And we have a new EMT program to offer for next year. So we're very thankful, and we do appreciate you taking advantage of the service. We're here for you, and you know, I think that we would really appreciate your vote on our budget in April. I do want to remind you that the vote is on April
22nd.
Thank you, 22nd. And our meeting will be April 9th. And I'd also just like to extend the invite once again for you all to join us on April 23rd. If you have not received the invitation, please just reach out and let us know for the meet and greet that we'll be hosting at Duchess Bosse's in our conference center. It's a reception beginning at 6:30 p.m. Thank you. Ooh, I'm throwing things.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
More questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Appreciate all you do.
Before you walk away, just want to congratulate Dr. DeLucia. She was newly minted as the district superintendent at Bosse's. About a week old now, is it?
A week, it was Wednesday, last Wednesday. Yes, congratulations.
I
A
was
week
with her
tomorrow.
when it was announced, and it was a nice to do that. And congratulations, well deserved. And I don't welcome aboard. You've been here for a while, so
Forever,
it doesn't
right?
really count. But welcome aboard.
We were at a meeting about a year and a half ago, and Paul said, Jody is Duchess BOCES. So, thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Congratulations. Okay, item 7.02, 2025-2026 budget update by our school business administrator.
Thank you very much. This is going to be a repeat of some information, and there will be some new information in this presentation. Tonight, we're going to review the proposed 25-26 budget. Again, discuss the considerations that went into preparing the budget, the key cost budget drivers for that proposed budget. I will present the proposed budget in its three parts of admin, capital, and program. We will also review the tax levy that we're proposing to support the 25-26 budget. Take another look at the proposed vehicle purchases that we will be using the capital vehicle reserve. And we will take a look at the 25-26 budget and what that would look like for Spackenville. Again, reviewing the proposed 25-26 budget, we're proposing a budget of $57,168,788, which is an increase of a little more than $3.2 million from the current year and 5.99% increase. We are also proposing a tax levy to support that budget of $33,665,757, which represents an increase of 1.7% over the current year's tax levy. Some of the things that went into developing this budget, the considerations, were based on the salaries, based on current collective bargaining agreements that are in place, and also estimates for the contracts that we have in district that are ending June of 2025. We're also looking at BOCES services, as you just heard in presentation from the BOCES superintendent. The number of participation services for the district is increasing over time, as well as the cost for BOCES to produce and put on those services. We're looking at increases in special education tuition based on historical trends. It increases anywhere from 5 to 7% year to year. BOCES also indicated that their health insurance, we're all on the same health insurance plan, so we're looking at about a 7% increase in premium year to year. The district is not anticipating any additional debt service borrowing, and we are planning to purchase 3 transportation vehicles. Additional things that we have under consideration are additional instructional and support staff. We're looking at adding a full-time instructor to supplement and to enhance the AVID program in the high school and in the middle school. And in the past couple of years, we've increased the monitor hours in both elementary schools. In the past couple of years, those increased the monitor hours were paid for using the federal stimulus money, so that money has exhausted and ended in September of 2024. So that additional salary has to roll into this budget. The district is also making adjustments to salary and per diem rates to reflect the increases in the New York State minimum wage, and in order to maintain competitive with other school districts and other industries. Governor Hochul has put in place planned increases in minimum wage for the next several years, and the district's made the decision to try to stay ahead of those minimum wages. We're also looking to replace some outdated and poorly performing facilities equipment. This is mostly things like snow blowers and salt spreaders, floor scrapers, and hand tools that are used by our maintenance and custodial staff. There are also some classroom maintenance and repairs that need to be done. We're going to replace some damaged shelving and cabinets, replace window shades, and malfunctioning smart boards. We're also looking to support our instructional needs. There's new instructional standards that have to be met, so there's gonna be additional supplies and textbooks and software needed to support those new standards. And textbooks are now not just textbooks, most of them have a software component with them, which adds to the cost of those software instructional needs. We're also looking to do some technology upgrades to improve our data security and increase our bandwidth. We're doing those in order to strengthen our ability to resume operations in case we do have a data breach, and additional security would help alleviate the potential of a data breach actually happening. In our budget, there are 5 components that represent 85% of the budget. Those are salaries, health insurance, BOCES, both retirement systems, and debt service. The district doesn't have a lot of leeway in those costs. Salaries are contractual, health insurance is dictated by our provider, as is the cost for the BOCES services. New York State dictates what the district's contribution will be for both retirement systems. The total of those 5 components is about $48.6 million, or 85% of the budget, which leaves the district only 15% to fund equipment, supplies, and other contractual costs. We are required to present our proposed budget in 3 parts: the administrative, program, and capital. The percentages of the budget for each one of these components has been fairly stable year to year. The administrative component is about 10% of the proposed budget. The program, which is the lion's share, is a little over 75% of the total budget. And the capital piece is about 14% of our total budget. And again, those percentages are pretty standard from year to year for those 3 components. An overview of the tax levy. We are suggesting that tax levy will be under the tax cap again this year. The current tax levy for the 24-25 year is $33,086,739. The maximum tax levy that the district could impose, otherwise known as the tax cap, for 25-26 is $33,941,093, which would be a 2.59% increase over the current levy. We are proposing to support our budget $33,665,757, which would represent a 1.75% increase over the current levy, and that's been in line with the past several years of being under 2%. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking to purchase 3 vehicles for transportation, a 7-passenger caravan. We've got an estimate on state contract on $45,500, and 2 30-passenger buses, just under $100,000 each. We're looking to do this so that we can ensure that we will have fuel-based vehicles to get us through the next 10 years when we have to fully convert to EV vehicles. And we're going to fund these purchases using a capital reserve, so it will not be included as part of the budget. This also eliminates the need for the district to borrow funds to make these purchases. There will be a separate proposition at the May 2025 vote asking the voters to approve the purchase of these buses using the capital reserve. Also, by law, we are obligated to present a contingency budget. A contingency budget will come into play should the voters not approve the budget in May of 2025. If the voters do not approve the budget, the board has 2 options. We can go straight to a contingency budget, or the board can request that we have a second vote. If the board opts to do the second vote and it is again defeated, the board is obligated to adopt the contingency budget for the 25-26 school year. And what would a contingency budget look like for staffing folks? The basic premise of a contingency budget is that there can be no increase in the tax levy. So we would have to impose the 24-25 tax levy, which is 33,086,739, which would mean that from the proposed budget, we would have to reduce that budget by $579,018 in order to keep the levy consistent with the current year. We would have to eliminate any equipment purchases, eliminate transfers to other funds, and make up the difference in reduction across the board for supplies to the budget. Therefore, our contingency budget for 25-26 would be a $56,589,770 budget, and would represent a 4.9% increase over the current budget. The budget calendar is finally getting shorter. The next board meeting, Dr. Fanuelli will present his recommended budget. On April 8th, we will be asking the board to adopt the budget and approve the resolution for the bus purchases using the capital reserve fund. On May 6th, we will hold the required public hearing, and May 20th is the actual budget vote and the trustee election. Information is currently on the district's website for any resident who is interested in running for the one Board of Education trustee position.
Thank you, Val. Any board comments or questions?
Thank you again, Val. All the work that goes into that.
Okay, item 7.03 is our elementary administration academic review update.
Thank you. That works. All right, good evening, everyone. So I'm going to kick off the academic review. Mr. D'Souza and I did a joint slideshow, and he told me to be quick. I'll try my best. All right, so just a reminder before I get into the numbers. So K2 is a bit unique compared to the rest of the school district in that there is not a New York State assessment, not a Regents or a 3.8 data point. So we used a norm reference test called iReady. It's the one that we've used for several years in a row. So we have some interesting trend data now. Similar to last year, we looked at some comparative data, not only to New York State but also the national norm. And you know, I hope there's a point in time where we don't have to go back to pre-COVID numbers, but we do still feel, and you'll see how it plays out with the averages nationally. We are still going to reference pre-COVID and post-COVID, just to give everybody kind of a sense of the impact there. So we'll start with reading, and if you look to the left, that is Spack and Kill. That is last year's data from the fall to the spring. If you look to the left and then to the right, in order from left to right, we have the national norm data pre-COVID, which was 2018-19, and I don't know if you can see it from the back of the room, but it's higher than the current national data, which is that middle bar, and it's also higher than the New York data, which is last year's data as well. So those numbers, so these are K5 numbers actually, and I'll kind of get down deeper into the K2 data. But it is, so if you look at the green, if the light green and dark green together is 73% on or above grade level for Spack and Kill. And the national norm pre-COVID was 57%. Post-COVID national was 52%. and post-COVID New York State is 49%. This next trend is what I know Mr. D'Souza and I it's something that we strive for. So it's our SPAC and kill trend to the left is the direct opposite of the trend to the right. So if you look at, so our goal is obviously to receive students at a certain level, and then over time, we want them to grow. So when they leave in second grade, in other words, we want them to be higher than they were in kindergarten. And it's the opposite with New York State and the national. So if you look at kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, you see how that green kind of goes up and to the right. And the SPAC and kill data, the green kind of goes down and to the right. That means that more students are proficient when they leave second grade in SPAC and kill, but less in New York State and less across the nation. 1 year ago seems like a long time ago, but we did kind of shine a light on last year's kindergarten class because it was looking back, all the way back to the MAPS data. It was the lowest group of kindergartners that we had since 2012, and it's nice to see. So that means last year, so last year we looked at the previous year, so now we're looking at them as first graders, and it's nice to see that progression. They've really made a nice jump there. If you compare second grade, so if you look at the SPAC and kill numbers, it really jumps out when you see the dark green number, so that is on or above grade level at 68%. And when you compare that to New York State at 20%, that's almost 3.5 times as high. So we're really proud of the progress in reading. This is something that we put a lot of time and energy and thought into. So iReady has a personalized pathway. So every kid takes the diagnostic, and it's pretty neat what it does. It pinpoints, going back to pre-kindergarten skills, very specific holes. We kind of think of kids as blocks of Swiss cheese as a visual, and the bottom and the holes leading to the top are gaps that they have in their learning. And the program, the software, takes that diagnostic data and it gives them an individualized learning pathway. And this shows that the students that have met their recommended weekly time on the program, which is between 30 and 49 minutes, they have the highest growth rate in terms of median average at 152%. So, it's something that we talk about. We're always cautious about too much computer time, at the younger levels. But this is a good data point for us to see. All right, so this is domain specific performance and growth, and it might be tough to see for people in the back, but there are light colored lines below the dark colored lines. The light colored lines signify the fall performance data in each domain. So you have phonological awareness, phonics, high frequency words, vocabulary, comprehension, and that just shows the growth in each one of those. Obviously at the primary level, one of our most important goals is to teach kids how to read. And so we spend a lot of time on those top two areas, phonological awareness and phonics, which you can see. Towards the bottom, it shows how each group, in terms of their baseline performance, how much they grew. And that shows that our students that started off lowest improved the most. All right, so I'll move over to math. I'll start off with the K-5 slides, similar to what we had in reading. So to the left is SPAC and kill, fall and spring, and to the right are the national norms pre-COVID, post-COVID, and New York State post-COVID as well. And as you can see, our K-5 numbers are higher. So this is the grade by grade breakdown, and this is a little bit different. It's a different story than reading. So the numbers are still very, very comparable, and in some cases, in all cases higher than the right two columns in terms of post-COVID. But if you look closely, there are some that are pretty close to the pre-COVID national norms. So we've been discussing that as well. All right, similar to reading, these are the domain-specific areas. You know, sometimes you see one of these areas that are significantly higher or lower than others. This is interesting because nothing seemed to really jump out. You know, geometry, measurement, and data, algebra, numbers and operations are all very similar. But if you look at the bottom, exactly very similar numbers to reading. Again, our lowest students at the beginning of the year that are 2 or more grade levels below are growing at the fastest rate out of our entire population. All right, some takeaways. So Nassau students continue to perform higher and grow faster than other students in our state and country. Multiple years in a row, our reading growth and proficiency continue to be greater than math. You know, it's actually, Mr. D'Souza will speak more about it. It's an interesting trend for us because if you look at the New York State data, it's the opposite of that in terms of math is generally higher than reading. So it's, you know, it'll be interesting as these students continue to trickle up through the system. We have spent an incredible amount of time and effort on kind of remaking our reading instruction, and we believe that's the biggest reason for the reading increase. But it's an interesting correlation when you compare it to the New York State data. I mentioned our lowest students are growing at a faster rate than any other group, and that is not always the case in every year. I had mentioned the focus on foundational reading skills paying dividends. Also the trend of students who meet their personalized pathway goal, their amount of minutes, are growing faster according to the data. And one thing that I think we're battling, which is not unique to SPAC and KIL, but it's something that we have to think, I think, long and hard about. Our kindergarten students undoubtedly have the least reliable data sets, and part of that is just their computer skills. Some districts actually don't assess kindergarten students until the middle of the year. We've toyed with that, but you know, we're on pace with the national averages, but we have put some thought and need to continue to talk about the best way to get reliable data from our kindergartners. Some action steps. I know Mr. D'Souza will talk about this as well. So New York State released literacy briefs. Basically, they're associated with the science of reading, and they have created a list for each area of reading, and they'll do the same for math, of research-based best practices. And we are kind of getting our hands dirty with that. Actually, just this morning we had a committee meeting where we are kind of doing an internal audit. At the end of it, Dr. Fanuelli will sign off on an attestation saying that we are doing these things. And we feel like we're in a really good place with that, and that's helped us. We'll continue to have, you know, you've heard Dr. Fanuelli say it frequently, but you know, it's a goal of ours to meet every student exactly where they're at. And I think although the lowest students show the most growth, we take pride in pushing our highest students just as much as our lowest students. And sometimes that can be equally or more challenging for a teacher that has gaps like this, and it's their responsibility to meet every learner. I know that we'll have a presentation coming up in the coming months about our plan for trimesters, but we believe that will add instructional time. That was our biggest reasoning for wanting to move to that. Number 4, we're really excited. Again, this will be another board presentation. I think Dr. Fanuelli had mentioned May, but we have over 60 parents who are interested in being on a committee to really talk about the impact and the mental health struggles that students have had in Spackenkill, and are very interested in partnering with us and the PTA and making a plan. We also have, I think, 12 from Hagen, 12 staff members, and 12 staff members from Nassau. So we're going to make in-school shifts, and then the parents are going to help us with making recommendations for home. And then the thing that I know it's in our mission statement, but it's probably what I'm most proud of and want to continue to keep moving forward with. We have a deep-rooted culture of collaboration, reflection, and continuous improvement. So that's not going to change, and we'll keep moving along with that. So thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to Mr. D'Souza.
Sir? So I'm going to start with the state data, being we have the state test in the 3-5 Hagen-Relman reading, math, and science. Just to contextualize the state test and kind of what they mean, and when I get into the scores here, because these are all important factors. The state is constantly tweaking the standards and best practices. So oftentimes, when they do make that shift, it's not until they roll out the test that we know how they're going to essentially assess that shift in the standard. So that's something to keep in mind. Computer-based testing is now kind of enforced on a timeline. Last year, 5th had to take all their tests on a computer, including the brand new science test. This year, 4th and 5th have to, and then next year, 3rd will have to as well. So that's certainly a factor, and it kind of changes our test prep and how we focus on typing, and those extended responses are now being transferred from brain, not to paper, but to keyboard, and that's a level of practice that students will need. Cut scores and scales change from year to year, so what could be a 2, mid-2, 1 year, could be a 3 the next year, depending on where kind of the state averages out. Our test opt-out rates vary year to year and school to school. So when I show you the comparison data, it is going against schools that may have had larger opt-out rates than us. We had a very large pool of students take the test, which we're super proud of. Every single grade level was over 90% of the students partaking in the state exams. And I think that kind of gives us a clearer picture, and I'll show you those numbers as we go forward. Test results are delayed, so the computer-based testing argument is you can get those scores back a little quicker, which then gives you more time to kind of prep and change curriculum or make shifts, but it's still taking quite a bit to get the scores. So the incentive for students to perform, if they're not really going to see those scores or hear those scores until fall of the next year, and how does that opt-out rate influence the student motivation in the moment? Certainly the impact of the pandemic, I know Mr. Lynch has referred to that, the post and pre, and I'll show you some of those numbers as well from iReady at Hagen. But currently our 5th graders were kindergartners when it shut down, and our 4th graders were hybrid in kindergarten. So those impacts of some of those early foundational skills. And then this was the first year, last year was the first year we took the science test in 5th grade. Remember, I didn't present any science data last year, it skipped the grade. So they used to take it in 4th grade. Now it's a brand new exam in 5th grade on the computer, and it's much more reading based, much more source based, and a lot of people, including New York State, are going to make some tweaks because it was essentially an 8th grade reading level. So that certainly took our students by surprise, but as you'll see, we still fared very well comparatively. So this is math to start. We've always kind of set the pace in math. When you see the bars, so I'll explain, the blue is Spackenkill, so it's Hagen. The red is Dutchess County schools, and the yellow is New York State schools. When you see the number next to the grade level below each bar, that's our percentage of participation. So 94% of 3rd graders took the test, and you can see our proficiency was over 60% in all 3 grade levels in math. continues to be a strength of ours, continues to be something that we're really super proud of. And, you know, with those new numeracy briefs that come out, we'll certainly make those shifts. But teachers really feel very comfortable with what the state test is giving. ELA, still strong. You'll notice that third grade is kind of a dip comparatively to the other grades. Our other grades actually grew from the year prior in ELA, and it was a focal point of mine with the teaching staff to grow our ELA scores. If you remember last year, I talked a lot about some action steps around ELA, forming the committee, making an audit of our curriculum. That audit led to us going full board into a new curriculum. So now, for the first year ever, K-5, all schools, or both Hagen and Nassau, are doing interreading. So what came out of that committee work and collaboration with the teachers is we really needed a comprehensive program. We were kind of doing a hodgepodge version of ELA, and the experience was different from room to room, grade level to grade level. So finally, we feel very vertically and horizontally aligned. Obviously, it's our first year, so there's some trial and error, but we feel very good. One piece of feedback that I continue to get as I check in with the grade levels is this is much more geared to prepare students for state test type questions. Where in the past, we were kind of doing that during test prep time. This spiral review of skills like central idea and characters, it's over and over in the interreading program, so that's something that I'll be curious to see what ELA scores are like next year. And the third grade bubble, there's certainly some factors there. We were one of the few schools in the area to do CBT for third grade. We didn't have to, but the benefit of that now is we know what we need to prepare for. One area that third graders struggled in was the extended response. If you asked the third grade team, which I did, their writing was pretty good. It was probably the transfer to the keyboard that made the extended response a little weaker. So those numbers in comparison, I don't know how many of the New York State schools actually made their third graders take it on the computer versus the Dutchess County schools. But in the next 2 years, it will all be even playing field. So that's something to keep in mind. And again, we're excited about where we're going ELA. We grew in 4th and 5th, and I think that growth will continue to go in the right direction moving forward as well. This is science. So despite what I told you about the 8th grade reading level and the new test and kind of being, when you take this assessment, there really is no test prep around it. We're super proud of our science program at Hagen. There's a lot of dedication by Mrs. Skorlik in our STEM lab to conduct those mandatory investigations leading up to the test, to make sure students are prepared for the type of questions that they're going to face. And you can see Hagen outpaced Dutchess County and New York State on the science test. And hopefully we'll continue to grow as we now know what the science test looks like, and we can make those adjustments curriculum-wise too. I did add some iReady pieces that Mr. Lynch had referred to, just so you can see similar trends as well. It's just going to be flip-flopped. So Spag&Kill is on the right, national and New York norms are on the left. Those national norms, like you mentioned, pre-COVID, this last year national norm, and then New York State national norm for the spring. I will say, obviously, and you can see our green bars, our dark green and our light green bars, outpace even the pre-COVID numbers, which is we're really proud of in the spring. But I'm super proud of our growth. So you can see, just on the Spag&Kill side, our fall bar numbers, the left bar on each grade level, and you can see the growth that happened. So you want the greens to grow, you want the reds to shrink, and certainly you see that at every grade level, and this is reading. And this is math. Highlight third grade math here because start of the year last year, they had about 10% of their grade come in with the third grade math skills, and they leave with 62%. So that's a huge growth number, and a credit to those teachers and those students for working really hard throughout the year and exiting with those prerequisite skills. And again, same idea, those national norms and pacing that. Some takeaways. Math continues to be a strength. There's no doubt about that. We have a large pool of students participating at Hagen, and that's continuing to grow. and hopefully that will stay where those numbers are because it gives us a really complete picture. ELA is stronger than the averages in the region and better than last year, but still room for improvement, like I talked about with the CBT factor and the extended response factor. She's here in the room, so I'm going to give her a shout out. Mrs. Hoey does an amazing job of our data and really helps me kind of break down the data. So each grade level meeting that I get this data, I go in, and it's so broken down that it basically tells the teacher how their room, their 25 so kids, did comparatively to their grade mates, to the county, and to the state. And that is, as a former teacher, it really gives you a kind of insight to why did my room or my class maybe do not so hot on certain questions and better on certain questions. And it's just a good internal reflection that's going to lead to better teaching. So those things I couldn't do without her, so thank you. Teachers are working really hard in that vein to meet students where they're at. And Hagen students continue to perform and grow higher than students nationally and in New York State. And reading growth and proficiency is greater than math, which is opposite of the New York State test data. And I think, like Mr. Lynch said, I think there's a super focus on our reading instruction right now and a real kind of attention to detail with our new ELA curriculum. So I think that will that's kind of vetting out in the numbers. So I mentioned the data chats. I meet with grade levels, but then I also meet with each individual teachers and go over release questions and how they're planning for growth. Literacy briefs just released, so we're conducting a review. As Mr. Lynch mentioned, the attestation. We feel very comfortable where we're at. First year full implementation into reading. It couldn't have gone better. The committee really is proud of the work that was put in, and now it's K-5. So that's really kind of aligned to our mission there around ELA. Certainly, fact fluency will always be a thing that we're focusing on, and we are piloting a program first in math right now through New York State, and then the Anxious Generation Plan and more to come on that. So thank you very much, and if you have any questions, me and Mr. Lynch are here.
Comments or questions from the board? Appreciate the information. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Doherty, Mr.
That'll
Doherty.
bring us to 7.04, Secondary Administration Academic Review.
Yeah, it's about to get really boring. You guys can go.
Bye, see ya.
Oh, that's all my stuff. Not this card yet, right? I need the card.
We will need the cards. See you, kiddo.
Don't worry, Dan. We'll stay.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Jody.
Yeah.
Oh, it is on. Okay, here we go. Well, good evening, everybody. And I'm going to take us through the Todd Middle School Academic Review, which I did a similar presentation last year. I'll go over some of the results, and then I'll go over the different things we do at Todd Middle School. So I always I start off with the ELA results. I like to start off by just talking a little bit about refusals, because we know that refusals kind of skew data, and I always start that off just to know that some of the data that we're looking at is obviously the data that of the students who took the test, and we don't have kind of the data of the students who don't take the test. So I just like to put that up there, and you can see that the refusal rate continues to be in 6th grade with 17%. You see how it goes up a bit each year, 21% for 7th grade, 24% for 8th grade. And you can see last year's refusal rates, which are similar. Some went up, some went down, kind of in the same place, about roughly 1 out of 5 don't take the test. And then you can see our student levels of students who took the test, who scored at levels 3 or 4. You can see those percentages, 62%, 63%, and 68%. So that is for the ELA for last spring. Looking at the math, first thing you'll notice is those refusal rates rise. You can particularly see 8th grade has quite a rise. So you can probably guess which test is given first, which is the ELA test, and then the math is given second. So refusals, just to remind everybody, is something that parents can do, right? Parents refuse tests. And so, you know, I think at a middle school level, I don't think we're alone, but, you know, I think the students, you know, talk to the parents about that, you know. So you can see those refusal rates, and then you can see, again, our students, you know, achieving at levels 3 and 4, 62%, 77%, 67%. Science, refusal rate 17%. Students scoring at levels 3 and 4 was 27%. That is the kind of the difference between that number and the other two numbers is the earth science regions. So all the students who take earth science do not take the state test. So basically, if you put in the earth science results, you'll get similar numbers in terms of kids achieving mastery.
I'm sorry, does that go towards the refusal, you're saying? If
No,
you take-
no, those
that's
refusal
separate.
numbers, no, but it'll go
Refusals.
towards, in other words, that 27% be more like 70%. Algebra, so we had our first administration of the new algebra regents, and we had, I don't put in the passing rates because all the students passed the test, but I put in the mastery rates. So the mastery rates for the new algebra regents was 43%. The mastery regents for the earth science regents was 60%. This will be the last administration of the old earth science regents. Beginning next year, we will be doing the new earth and space science regents. So kind of similar to the new algebra regents, we may see a dip in mastery level. That's not only us. New test. It's not only a new test, but it's also, I think, a bit of a new calibration of, you know, the grading as well. So you'll see that. But those are our numbers for both algebra and earth science. In terms of what we do at Todd, firstly, I want to talk about the social emotional program supports and interventions. We at Todd, and also not only us, but all middle schools know that social emotional support is really important. A lot of the things that keep students back academically are not necessarily, the math and the writing, as much as what's going on within them that stops that or slows down that process. So the Positivity Project, which we've been doing here for a number of years, we continue to do our virtual P2, which we now do twice a week. We brought in a mindfulness piece, so we do some mindfulness on Mondays. We do a virtual on Fridays. Part of the Positivity Project is also we bring it in for discipline and behavioral reflections. So it's not just something that we're doing to teach all students, but students who struggle with things, we like to use that as a way to remind them. It gives us a common language. And just, it's not on the slide, but recently through the site-based team, we started doing what's called Positively P2, which we kind of recognize students. They basically, any staff member can recognize a student, and then their names are put into into a raffle. We pull out one a week. The student gets a gift card to the book bag, and the teacher gets a nice parking spot near the school as an incentive to do it. And we've had, I think we've done it for about 6 weeks. There's been probably at this point between 800 and 1,000 students recognized, which is amazing. There's students do a wonderful job, and it's nice to recognize them. So, and we know that trying to do this kind of work keeps the culture in a place that that students can learn and that students feel comfortable.
Mr. Jordan does a nice job. He recognizes the teacher who recognized the kid. Whose parking spot did they get, Mr. Doherty?
They get my parking spot, and it's worth the walk. I can always use the exercise. So anyway, it's been really nice, and it's a nice added piece to it. Clubs and activities, as anybody who is in this building from 2:30 to 4 o'clock knows, that clubs and activities are very busy at Todd Middle School. We know that clubs and the data all says that there's a correlation between involvement in after-school activities and student achievement. And we have just, we have 25 clubs. I usually do a clubs and activities report. I did that a couple of months ago. The amount of people, students involved is huge. Same thing with the music program and sports. It's not listed there, but they are also, there's just a lot of involvement, and we know that that really helps student achievement. And we think that, I think that's reflected in our scores. Our counseling department, they do an excellent job. We're in our second year with Amanda Undal, social worker. She's done a great job. So they really they work very hard. Between the 4 counselors and Mr. Cormier and myself, we do a lot of work of trying to make kids feel good about themselves, feel good about their situation. And, those are the things that, you wouldn't see that necessarily, you wouldn't think about that as being remediation. But it is, we're remediating. Because those are the things that sometimes hold them back, especially at the middle school level. We do a lot of work with DASA, with Title IX, with cell phones. So a lot of the things that we know are important things that middle school students are learning about. We, especially through the P2 virtual, we're able to do mini assemblies whenever we want. So anytime we want to talk about something, this week I'm going to talk about teasing. We haven't done that in a while, so I'm going to talk about good-natured teasing versus hurtful teasing. And again, you might not think that that is something that could be reflected in the scores, but on the middle school level it is, because those are the things. Because being teased or feeling like nobody that's going unheard are things that will affect what a student does in the classroom, and then that will affect how it shows up on a state test. Cell phones, we have attempted to stay ahead of it. They travel pretty fast on cell phones. Not too easy to stay ahead of them. But as we know, the work that's been going on with the Anxious Generation, we have been, we as a school have been trying to be very proactive with that, and students have been mostly responsive. I think the cell phones, we see, we know that they're there, but we don't see them. We see, and they're allowed to use them from dismissal till like 2:35, because that's when everybody has to check in, from 2:27 to 2:35. That's when all the check-ins are. I'm staying after, I'm not staying after, I'm going to this town, whatever they're doing. And boom, you'll see literally 350 cell phones yeah, from 2:27 to 2:35. But those things are really important. And, the learning that goes with that about social media, about being appropriate, about being a good digital citizen, all those things are things that can impact it. They can and do end up impacting how students do on tests. In terms of academics and supports and interventions, the teacher and student resilience, even though that's a kind of, they had mentioned a little bit of looking at some kind of post-pandemic things, and I think I consider ourselves still in a bit of a post-pandemic world in terms of that, and being resilient is really important. So both teachers and students are resilient. I think the Positivity Project has helped a lot with that as well. And I think that's a really important and vital part of it, is that we try to lift each other up and try to support each other. And we get a lot of support from the students too, especially me. Today was one of those days that I didn't feel well this morning, and it was funny, and I don't know if it just worked out that way, but there must have been literally like 15, 20 students that went out of their way to say hello to me today. And they do all the time, but I was noticing it more today because I needed it. So it goes both ways. Attendance, if you look at us compared to other, I don't have the data in front, but the attendance is very good. Students are here, students show up. We, Mr. Cormier is kind of our attendance, general. He's the one who kind of tracks it. We meet with counselors. We follow up. A lot of attendance stuff at this level, is more about parents and guardians and the students. You know what I mean? It shifts a little in high school, but in a middle school, it's usually a kind of a family thing. So we work with families to say, hey, they're better here. They need to be here. There's always cross-curriculum work being done in ELA, math, and science. We don't look those tests, even though those tests are in those subject areas. ELA, math, and science are done in basically every classroom. Every classroom has a piece of something. Music is a very mathematical subject. So it's kind of, so I just thought, it's not just the math teacher and the math teacher and the English teacher and the science teacher are not the sole people responsible for state test results. And when we do, and the work we do in all of those classes, encore classes, health classes, if you look at the rigor of what they do, it's rigor that will help them on state tests. Extra help is huge. There's usually, out of 400 students, anywhere from 150 to 275 are going to be here from 2:30 to 3 o'clock. And homework helper we've been doing for a couple of years. That's right here. That is where you have avid students. Sometimes you have high school avid students. Sometimes you have regular high school students coming down. And you have students helping each other. So there might be students who on one day are receiving help and the next day they're giving help. So homework helper is a really great thing. Actually, that runs till 3:30 on Mondays and Tuesdays, which is a nice thing. The vertical work and the summer work that's done, the teachers do, the summer grants are really important. Dr. Mulford leads that, and we do a great job of having kind of homegrown curriculum work done, and that is a really important piece of what we do because we want to, it's one thing to kind of to have a knowledge of what the standards are, but having a knowledge of who the students are and what we do, what we need to do. Dr. Fain-Wiley says you got to meet students where they are. And that work that they do over the summer is really important because during the school year, it's a little hard. We're kind of flying a plane. It's hard to try to fix things while the plane's going, but the summer is a really important piece. The special education department is tremendous. If you look at our special education students versus they do very well on state tests, but more importantly. They do very well in the school day to day. I think our special education department is outstanding. I think the support is outstanding. I think the leadership's outstanding, and they do a great job. E&L department, we don't have a lot of L students, but the students we have they get special attention. And for us, it's James Londano. In other schools, it's different. But they get to know the families. They work. It's a very personal thing. They go above and beyond. And again, those are things that are going to end up showing up on state tests. The AVID program is now in its third year. The AVID program, the students have done outstanding in the program. It is now its first year in the high school. We've been very excited. The professional development that we get through AVID is excellent. We've been able to turnkey some of that professional development here. That's something that we're going to continue to grow. It's great not only for the students involved in the program, but it ends up being, the entire staff begins to get more and more of the professional development involved. And AVID's just, it's just excellent teaching. It's nothing new. Everything is out there, but their resources, the way they package things, the ability for us to use it is outstanding. AIS, again, is another huge part of remediation. We have ELA classes, we have math classes, we have study skills classes. Not AIS, but important too, is multisensory reading. So all of those are targeted, right? Those are students that we know are deficient, and we work really hard to try to meet their needs and to, and they have time. Most of those classes are every other day. So, but it's a great way for us to, and most of those classes have, 2 to 5 kids. So it's, it's small classes, and they get a lot of help from the teachers. And finally, what used to be called RTI is now called MTSS, and we meet every Friday. We look at a lot of those students are your AIS students, but we look at all students. And we started a mentorship program last year where basically the 6 of us, the 4 counselors, and Mr. Cormier and I we have become mentors for different students. We try to meet with them regularly. We try to work with them one-on-one because it's those relationships. Going back to Dr. Ryder work of having a connection with an adult is really important, and we try to foster that. So, overall, both this and the SEL is the work of what everybody says about Spattenkill, which is that it's small, it's close-knit, and you get kind of personalized help, which I think is really important. And all of that, feeds into, the state results. It's kind of like a whole, the entire school. And I think that is all I've got. So if anybody has any questions, I can answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, good evening. I know it's getting late. Won't be too long. I'm doing something a little different than I have in the past. In the past, that we focused a tremendous amount on data, and there were times when we would have like 30 or 40 slides going through all of that data. But data really doesn't tell the whole story. I kind of equate it to going on a road trip with your family. So the data is there to make sure you know you're good. So you look down at the speedometer, direction you're going, engine temperature, but it doesn't speak at all to the places that you stopped to eat, the license plate games that you played with your kids, the smell when you opened up the window, smell when the window was closed, So I wanted to focus more on the story of Spattenkill High School, if you will. And like everybody said, I mean, none of this is possible without Mrs. Hoey. She is behind the scenes. She doesn't get a lot of recognition, but she so deserves it. None of us would be able to come to you with the information that we have without her. She's a cornerstone for all of our programs. So thank you so much, Mrs. Hoey. So I have a couple markers. Again, if you remember from all those slides in the past, we were always in the top 3 in one way or the other. And it continues to be the same way. It's our graduation rate. Graduation rate for students that struggle or students with disabilities. That's basically showing you that we are successfully helping kids graduate so that they can move on with productive and good lives. The Regents, if I could go through all of those, show the same thing in terms of proficiency, mastery. We do well in all of those areas. So to me, what's more important is the story or the culture. What makes Spattenkill High School special? And I can tell you that it is a very special place. The district is, but my job tonight is to focus on the high school. And the fact that we do want to meet kids where they are. And I want to show you the culture, and I want to explain the story of how we do that. So, AP exams. We're a small high school. We have 15 courses that are available, and students are taking advantage of it. It's over the course of the years, we have a lot of kids that are taking advantage of those AP classes, and those are challenging classes. They're at the college level. We have dual enrollment classes that we partner with Dutchess. I listed them there. We also have science research, which is done through SUNY Albany. These are our enrollment numbers. The reason that I put tuition next to it is I'm sure the board knows that in 23-24, that's when students would have to pay a portion of tuition, and that may affect numbers. We have to see, you know, it is a difference between the 269 and the other numbers, but we have to keep an eye on it. But I thought that was important information for the board to see. CTI is an awesome program, and you hear more now than ever about you know, what a great life you can lead going into the trades, and there's less college debt. Doesn't matter. So at Spack-and-Kill High School, we want kids to be able to explore what they might want to do down the road, and you can see how the numbers have increased over the years. What has not increased over the years are the number of kids that we put into the program where kids tend to have behavioral issues. They said that they had the one. I like to keep our kids home because I think we can do, you know, unless it's a really, you know, special circumstance, we have the staff with the know-how, and we love our kids more than anybody else is going to love our kids. So we try to keep them home as much as we can. So music, why did I put music up there? You know, obviously we've invested more in the music program, but at the high school level, kids stay in there not only to get, you know, the higher level Regents credential, but because they love their teachers. They love their, you know, the other kids that are in the program. They love what they do, and look at the numbers of kids that are staying in music. The same goes for foreign language. It's not like this in other high schools. They're there because they love their teachers, they love their peers, and they love what they do. And so many look forward to that overseas trip as well. And most schools don't do that anymore, probably because of liability, probably because, you know, their kids, they can't trust them. And I'll get to some of that too. We can trust our kids, and we can do things that other districts can't do. Science research, numbers are growing. We talked about it at our faculty meeting today, a little bit about science research. And what an awesome program, you know, the 3 years that the kids invest. You know, we have kids that have, they've published articles. It's just absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. Sports, another, you know, so this is 23, 24, 24, 25. The reason we did that, it kind of covers a full year of sports, although it's split over 2 years. So, you know, we have over 500 kids in the school, 465 student spots. Obviously, kids are counted again if they're in additional sports, but we have a lot of kids participating in sports. And the kids that are participating in sports do well academically, both as individuals and as teams, and that, you know, 90% or higher GPA, that's, you know, that's a pretty high marker. So clubs, we have 35 clubs at the high school. And again, students obviously will be counted more than once. We have this year 900 spots of students that are going to those clubs. And I just threw out there drama, for instance. 114 kids altogether, 75 are from the high school. That includes both cast and crew. And we have Hagen students that are coming up so that they're excited when they come up to the high school or to the middle school about being in such programs. Another special thing about the high school and the district is that we're very community oriented. And Leo obviously is a community service club. And we're told, although we're one of the smaller schools, high schools, we have the largest number of students that participate in New York State. I mean, that says a lot. And in terms of just some final thoughts, after school, like at Todd, you know, we have a 10th period, so students that want to stay after for extra help have exams that they have to catch up on, or a lot of times they just will spend time with a teacher that they had previously that they miss and just want to catch up. It's all about relationships. The after school 3 to 5 program. So if a student has to be suspended We don't send them home with a Corona book and email them, stuff to do. We connect them with a real live teacher from the high school that is with them to create those, because the bond is so important. Some of those kids may need counseling, that's done during that time. And also if students are medically fragile so that they don't fall behind, same thing. But we don't just get rid of our kids. Sometimes there are consequences, but they know and their parents know that we care and that we love them, and that's why we bring them back to our school to continue to educate them. RTI, I didn't know the initials changed. I'm not big on that, but as long as I'm here, it's going to be RTI. How many different renditions of E&L have there been? So every Friday at the high school, we meet for about an hour and a half to 2 hours to go over every kid that we may have concerns about. And there are a lot of people in the room, from the nurse to the administrators, the guidance counselor, social worker, school psychologist, athletic director, school resource officer. So, that's a lot of people and a lot of time, but we really get to stay on top of all of our kids and make sure that everybody is okay. Algebra 2 with lab, why I think that's important. Algebra 2 is a difficult class. Years ago, we wanted kids to push themselves, like Mr. Lynch said. We don't only focus on kids that are struggling, but our most capable kids we want to push further. And we found that there were many kids that just needed a little bit more time to achieve that goal, and that program has been incredibly successful. We've had 42 field trips last year, and this is where the trust thing comes in. If you have kids and teachers that can't work together, that can't trust one another, the last thing you're going to do is going to go out in public. I mean, that's embarrassing. But I can't tell you how many times we do go out and people come to us and say, your kids are wonderful, please come back. And they do all kinds of things, from community service to visiting museums to things like visiting different colleges, taking our kids in 10th grade to see if they want to go to CTI, competitions in math, science, music, so on and so forth. Mentoring program, where we have high school kids that work with like a Big Brothers Big Sisters program, both at Nassau and Hagen. Phones, man, I'm so tired of the phones thing. We don't need big government to tell us how to regulate our kids, put them in a freaking bag or hand them into a truck. We have conversations. Wow, right? Isn't that amazing? Conversations with our kids. We get their input. We say, what our expectations are, where we have to go. And do we have no problems? No, you'll never have no problems. But the vast majority, we don't have issues with the phones. They do what we ask them to do, and we respect them. And they respect us for respecting them. So it's a win-win. And so the point of my whole presentation is that successful students are engaged students. Our high school the foundation is on relationship. It's on respect. And when you have that, you can weather any kind of storm. You hear people talking about changes in, expectations from the state education department. Different people are in office. You get some troublesome kids or families that come in. If you have a solid culture, you can weather any of that. And you have to go to the grave to defend that culture. That's something that you can't cave into. But as long as you have that, you're good. And then school safety. You can have all the hard stuff that you want, metal detectors, armed guards, big guys walking around. That doesn't make a safe school. What makes a safe school are relationships and respect. So, and that's that. I think that's it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Board comments or questions overall, or specifically for students?
Just wanted to thank Mrs. Hoey and our principals who really did an amazing job showing some of our successes, showing how we reflect on things, how we continuously drive ourselves to improve and be the top that we can be. So we appreciate that because at the end of the day, that's always what we want, is the best for our students, right? Our student outcomes are the most important things, and that's what we strive for. So appreciate all the presentations tonight. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to item 8.01, board correspondence. I have none. 8.02 is comments from the public on non-agenda items. Any public comments on non-agenda items? Okay, 8.03 is comments from the board. Any comments from the board?
I do have a comment.
Excellent.
I wanted to congratulate Timothy He. He's I believe a 7th grader in the middle school who did a solo at the CIA today. It was awesome that the 5th grade band, chorus, and orchestra were able to attend, as well as the middle school orchestra. And Miss Valentine was in the orchestra as well, playing the bass. So just a big shout out to them. They did a fabulous job. My kids came home and were just raving about it. So
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
I'll brief comment on the Dutchess County School Board Association meeting last Thursday, the 6th. And I attended that, and just a quick follow-up. The two main topics for the agenda were a little bit of a report from around the districts in the county about the budget situation, and all the districts reported, I don't think there was an exception, that they're on track to come in under the cap. So people are pretty optimistic in that respect in terms of their budgets. There was some talk in that conversation about school bus issue. And so some districts are starting to experiment a little bit with electric buses. No one's sanguine yet about the prospects of that initiative kind of working out in the long run, but there was healthy discussion about that, as typically has been the case in the past. We also talked as a second issue about the phone policies for our district. And it was interesting to hear that some districts have begun to implement district-wide policies or policies that vary from school to school as well. Most people are on top of the problem, I think, recognize the issue, and I think to echo what Steve was saying, are really trying to think about ways that they can address a problem that everyone acknowledges, but in ways that are appropriate for and suited to their school districts, so their own districts and their own students. So I mentioned our approach, and I think people are sort of on top of that issue. So those are the two main issues that we discussed at the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to item 8.04, comments from our superintendent.
Joe, did you have the cell phone go off? Was that planned?
All right, good time.
Just want to thank all of our presenters today. Really took a lot of effort to put that together. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But want to remind everyone there's no school on Friday. We're having a conference day, and remind the board that we're going to have a little mini celebration for the 160th anniversary. Have a little assembly with our faculty and some performances and a brief history of Spacky Kill. So something cool to look at. But 160 years will be celebrated. 1865 is when we began. And for students, no school. So just be aware of that. And then get back to today. So a lot of these presentations that we saw from our principals really get started in something that we have monthly, as much as possible, is we have data meetings. And we really get to talk about data. And I do want to highlight Kathy Hoey again. She had a slide. But she does an amazing job. She does reach out and we kind of talk about what to talk about, but she comes up with ideas and looks for trends and finds trends. And I think we have one tomorrow. So looking forward to that, especially on the heels of today's presentations. But it is something we take seriously. But we also know that we're more than a data point. We're more than that. I think you saw that flavor a little bit in some of these presentations, and especially the last one, to really look at what we are and who we are.
And we're proud of that. We do well with those numbers, but we're proud of the other part and what we do. I don't know about the smell in the car, Mr. Mavisher, but we just smell outside, right?
Yeah, stick with that.
We want to thank everyone and you know, congratulate our district on 160 years. So thank you.
Thank you. So that brings us to 10.01. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0, and we'll see you on March 25th.